And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Tsimshian people. Historically, the mountain pine beetles usually produce one generation of young beetles per year, and populations were controlled by cold winter temperatures that killed most of the beetles. With longer, warmer summers, the beetles began to have two generations per year, and at warmer winter temperatures, more beetles survived to breed again the next year. On today's Open Connection, we open our archives to bring you this story from 2002.
This is the bug that's causing such havoc. The mountain pine beetle is natural to BC's interior, but the current infestation is the largest in recent history, and it's threatening swaths of timber that loggers, sawmills, and the government have been relying on for raw material and revenue.
Mountain pine beetles normally have a one-year life cycle. They fly in the summertime from the red trees to the green trees, lay their eggs under the bark of the green trees, and then what will happen is they'll develop into larvae that winter and develop glycol antifreeze, which helps protect them from the cold. And then they'll overwinter, go dormant over winter as larvae, and then the next spring again they'll start developing till we're around, in this part of the world, end of July, beginning of August, they'll fly again and complete that one-year life cycle. However, we're up in the north here where last year we had a really cool spring and a cool summer, so a lot of the beetles went through a two-year cycle, which they still have beetle attack in the red trees.
This winter was very much like last winter, and we didn't experience one of those extreme cold weather events, 35 to 40 below for 2 weeks or so, but it requires to dramatically reduce the beetle populations. So we expect to see a significant expansion again during the June to September period this summer in the beetle population. Last time we didn't have a cold winter like this, a year ago, the beetle expanded by about 40% in terms of the volume of timber damaged and killed. And we would expect to see a similar expansion this summer.
Forest practices have made the region's forests more susceptible to pine beetle attack. Before the intervention of humans, fire helped control the pest. Now government and industry are fighting these insects a bit like they were a fire.
Along the leading edge of the infestation, the beetle populations are smaller, and it's easier to, if you can find them, it's easier to remove those small patches and essentially put out the fire for a while.
Last November, the BC government announced an action plan for fighting the mountain pine beetle. Ray Schultz was appointed beetle boss, and the battle has raged through the winter. The strategy focuses largely on harvesting infested timber.
We estimate this winter we'll harvest about 12 million cubic meters, or slightly more than 12 million cubic meters of pine bark beetle infested timber. And in addition to that, probably about 2 million cubic meters of spruce beetle infested timber. We have serious spruce beetle problems, but not on the scale of the pine beetle problem. A lot of that harvest, the majority of that harvest, has been focused in the forest districts around Houston, Burns Lake, Vanderhoof, Prince George, and Quesnel.
We are presently about 1.7 million cubic meters into our 3 million cubic meter cut. We hope to have it be at 3 million by year 2003, so we're incrementing the system up at the end of 2003. We are presently advertising licenses as we speak to turn around and address the increase, and we will end up with some redwood. We will end up with hopefully getting as much of the current attack as we can, and we will also, in the process, because of the way harvesting operations are, we'll end up taking some uninfested timber along with it.
In the Maurice Forest District near Houston, the pine beetle problem isn't as severe. It's actually on the western edge of the infestation, and in fact, spruce beetles, another serious pest, are 80% of the problem right now. But much of the area is covered with pines, and they're susceptible to infestation, moving up especially from Tweedsmuir Park, just across the Nechako Reservoir.
Our Houston operations this winter normally logs about 65% of our annual allowable cut in the winter time, and that translates into about 750,000 cubic meters of harvest. And this winter, 100% of that harvest is directed into controlling either mountain pine beetle or spruce bark beetle.
The Forests Ministry's strategy in the Maurice includes falling and burning and pesticide applications in small remote locations. And in other places, companies are logging using a range of opening sizes. Tim Smith says contrary to their ecological goals, at least a third of Canfor's cut blocks have been under 5 hectares this winter. Over the Parrot Lakes, we could see an area being logged to clear out spruce beetles, using both clear cutting and selective logging, and leaving a buffer along the lake shore. Within the buffer, we found several infested trees. Woodpeckers had already been chipping away bark to get the bugs inside, and the trees themselves have been trying to pitch out the invading beetles with their sap. As predicted, it was also the older trees on this site that had been attacked.
They like to hit the thicker bark because, again, that shelters them from predators, which is the woodpecker, but also shelters them from the cold. So typically when a spruce beetle infestation goes through a stand, they usually take the mature, larger diameter stems. The more younger, thinner, or smaller diameter stems are spared and might get hit in the next infestation.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thanks for staying with us. Under the Species at Risk Act, all listed caribou populations in Canada are identified as needing special management actions because of their declining populations. In BC, this decline may be attributed to habitat loss and displacement and habitat fragmentation and alteration. Let us return to the archives to discover how the mountain pine beetle is affecting caribou herds.
Complicating the beetle battle is another creature that enters the Whitesale area from Tweedsmuir Park every year. That's caribou. Biologists have been studying their movements. They've tracked them across the islands in the Nechako Reservoir, up into the higher elevations for calving, and then back down into lower wetland areas where food is plentiful.
That allows us to identify critical networks of core habitats around wetlands and dry ridges and features that we know caribou are keying in on, and then trying to come up with a management strategy for the entire landscape that allows us to deal with the high hazard and hit beetle areas while working around these critical habitats and keeping them connected across the landscape. To do that, we've come up with a number of different strategies. We've attempted to use a range of opening sizes and identify chunks of ground in and around those key features we call habitat networks, where you do hit the spots, where it's just one or the other. There are winners and there are losers, and there have been occasions in this landscape where we've been successful in managing for both resources, and there have been areas where we have simply walked away from the timber because caribou are so high value there, and there are areas where the beetles are just so bad we've had to minimize the caribou issue and take the wood out.
Although it's not garnered much attention, there is some opposition to the way the province is responding to the beetle infestation. Environmental groups are worried about over-harvesting. Judy Stratton, an activist in the Lakes District, agrees something must be done to protect the economies of forestry-dependent towns, but she's concerned about the current approach.
I see that it's just a frenzy that, this epidemic is the people who look at those trees with dollar signs are becoming hysterical because they're dying. Well, I don't agree with the increase in the AAC that's been done in the Lakes District. They've doubled the cut. That is not a sustainable cut in this area. It is twice the sustainable cut.
The government, however, argues the cut now won't make a difference in the long run.
Whether the trees are harvested or killed by the beetle has very similar effects on long-term timber supply. So when the Chief Forester raised the allowable cut in Lakes TSA and Quesnel TSA, he takes a slightly different thought process to that decision. He does analyze the impact on long-term timber supply from the increased harvest levels. In the case of Lakes TSA, the analysis done by the Chief Forester showed that the higher harvest could be maintained for at least 10 years without causing in the future, in the mid and long term, i.e. many decades in the future, without causing the allowable cut to drop below the current level.
The Forests Ministry has sped up the paperwork to aid in the attack on beetlewood this winter. It's also reduced stumpage rates to offset the extra cost of cutting beetlewood.
It's typically more money to actually get the site ready for harvesting. We have to spend more time detecting where the beetles are and making sure that's included into our harvest blocks. And then the actual harvesting itself is more expensive because we tend to concentrate on smaller patches and we spread ourselves all over the landscape. So we have more roads that are operating on, more road maintenance costs. Our harvesting costs tend to be higher because we're trying to be more selective in the kind of trees we're harvesting. And then we even incur some additional costs around the cost of inventorying more fiber in the wintertime in our sawmills and the management of getting that inventory consumed before the beetles fly next year.
There's also a challenge in selling products made from bugwood. That's because pine and spruce bark beetles carry a fungus into their burrows, a fungus that creates a blue stain.
Right now, the European and the Japanese markets won't accept logs with that blue stain on the lumber. They're fearful that it might be bringing another pathogen into their country. Also, Canfor cuts a lot of lumber for the Home Depot, Lowe's market, which is an appearance grade product, and the consumer doesn't like to see that blue stain.
Canfor is selling some timber to builders of log homes and makers of flooring and other finishing products who value the unusual color. But while those in the Maurice district feel they have a handle on the beetle problem, to the east, foresters admit the beetles have the upper hand. BC's chief forester has proposed doubling the cut in the Prince George region, and the federal government is now pledging some help. Everyone is praying for a cold enough winter next year, and no one wants to contemplate the possibility that global warming could mean the frigid temperatures needed to kill the beetles naturally could become a thing of the past.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. The cultural and linguistic diversity in the Northwest Coast is one of the most diverse regions of Indigenous people in what colonialism has deemed North America. Northwest Coast Indigenous songs, dances, and ceremonies were outlawed in Canada from 1884 to 1951. For 67 years, it was illegal to be who they truly were. Let us return to the archives as Brenda Wesley shares about the Crest dance.
It's a sacred dance that's shared by the Tsimshian, Haida, Haisla, Niska, and Gitxsan of the Northwest, marked by a call to the spirits and to nature. The Crest dance is many things to different nations, but mainly it's performed during times of financial need and during feasts or celebrations. Brenda Wesley, who teaches the dance, explains.
What it is, it's a sacred dance that is done during an opening ceremony to help people identify their crests. It's also done in what is known as a blanket dance. If there's a time of trouble or if somebody needs a little bit of financial help, this is when the crest dance is done.
Each person in the dance has a crest or animal they represent. That animal, either the eagle, raven, blackfish, also called the killer whale, or wolf, has been passed down from generation to generation from the mother's side. And there's a story behind each crest, how the family came to have it. Brenda Wesley's family is the blackfish.
It's believed that one of my ancestors was approached by a killer whale, or was taken care of by the killer whale. One of the stories is one of the hunters got lost at sea, and then the killer whales came on both sides of the canoe and ushered this hunter home.
The moves during the crest dance mimic the crest or animal the person represents. For example, the Gispaguara or killer whale must move the way a real killer whale would, in a pod or with a mother and babies, or like an older killer whale gracefully swimming in the ocean. Wesley says when someone dances, the most important thing to know is the animal and to move at all times with respect.
They have to study that animal because that's what the Tsimshian people did years ago. That's why these animals are special to us, because someone studied them in a very scientific way. They need to move respectfully to the beat. It's got to be handled in a respectful way, and they do have to take the proper steps in time with the music in order for it to have an effect on the audience.
Before the dance begins, everyone must don either a button blanket or a blanket that represents their crest, and if they want, a cedar hat. The button blankets are embroidered with the person's traditional name on one side and their house and tribe on the other. This serves to identify who they are. But under no circumstances can another crest or non-First Nations person wear the blanket without the owner's permission.
For a non-First Nations individual to take my button blanket and put it on and to try to do any kind of other dance other than the crest that's on here, it's forbidden. It's just, you just don't do that.
The dance, as we mentioned, is a bit different for each nation. It may be performed in several ways and with different kinds of music. The Spee-Shunt dancers based in Kitsim-Kalem have developed at least 2 ways to perform the dance. This is the more traditional way. A blanket is placed in the middle of the dance, then the crests are called out one at a time. Oftentimes the eagle goes first, then the raven, the blackfish, and then the wolf. And this, their own unique crest dance. Both share some of the same characteristics: the call to the crest, the use of box drums and handheld drums. The crest dance is performed by people of all ages. It's a time-honored tradition that means many things to each nation. Wesley says, above all, when performing the dance, pay respect to the crests, because it's the animal behind the crests that have helped guide them through bad times and the good times.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Chess, as we know today, was born out of the Indian game Chaturanga before the 1600s AD. The game spread throughout Asia and Europe over the coming centuries and eventually evolved to what we know as chess around the 16th century. In this final segment of Open Connection, we return to the archives to see why some people see chess as a sport.
Soccer, basketball, athletes? Well, maybe, but in this scene, these two are tangled in competition, but not in the physical sense, but instead it's intense battle of the minds. The game of chess, it was an event at the Northern BC Winter Games, an event that attracted a lot of attention and abundance of fierce rivalry.
Chess is a really complex game, that's why so many people play it. Strategy is just one thing, there's tempo, there's material. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it that people got to understand. The time is a factor too, that's why it's a sport. I like to play really fast games. I like to play chess in a minute, I like to play chess in 5 minutes. I like to play glow-in-the-dark chessboards, take it to the street.
Kitimat's Forsyth family is involved in chess. Dad Bruce and his 2 sons and many other family members have been playing for years. It's an activity that was taught by Dad. His sons picked it up easily, and now it's something they can all do together.
It's a game, I guess, of patience. Often they take a long time. Adult games will go as long as 3.5 or 4 hours sometimes. I shouldn't say often, sometimes. But so you have to be patient, and you have to be able to be focused for that period of time. We've been doing this for about 4 years now, and it's kind of become a family tradition, I guess you could say, yeah.
Canadian chess's top dog is the Canadian Chess Federation, and similar to many other sports or activities, chess championships and tournaments take place all over the country at just about any given time. There are many different divisions, and thousands of Canadians are actively involved.
And you've got to either be the kind of person that wants to play it. A lot of it's ego. A lot of people, when they get really good at chess, start to use their chess playing ability as a example of how smart they are. So a lot of times you see really good chess players and they act like little children.
Chess relaxing, and it's an interesting game. It's how I can say, you can really challenge yourself.
The Terrace Chess Club has been around since the 70s. Just recently, they have moved their weekly Tuesday night get-together to the Terrace Public Library, a spot these chess enthusiasts say suits them just fine.
Well, let's go back long ways. Early 70s, we have George Brown and we was playing at home, and then we create a chess club, and then we start playing more and more newcomers coming, and we playing all the times, and it's an interesting game. If it's anybody like the challenge, you can just come out and play with us. We got a few people here who always helping and teaching what is the best way to do, and like you got a lot of books in the library too, you can pick up and then you can learn by yourself. Or a lot of people have a computer now, and you can play at home. You're on a computer, you can practice up too, because some of them have a chess game.
It's a game that you can be aggressive but friendly at the same time, and I think it's a game that definitely involves matching up 2 people against each other, and there are no in chess, there's no opportunity for chance to take effect. It is merely 2 people against each other, and if you will only lose or win by how good you are.
And what about the people who poke fun at chess for not being a real sport? Well, chess players will defend that to the very end.
I don't know about other chess players, but I find at the end of a day of playing tough games, not only mentally, but physically, I feel quite tired at the end of the day.
Definitely. I think that if you've ever played a 3-hour chess match, you feel like you've had a pretty good workout.
Chess is a sport, yes, I think so. Well, it's you don't do work that hard like any other sport. Like it's a lot of things involve your mind. You know, it's you can be really tired at the end of the game if you have a tough competition, because sometimes, you know, if you have a really strong partner on the side, you have to be really think about it before otherwise you lose. Huh?
And this is why, like in any other sport, chess players need to be in the right mindset to achieve success and defeat their competition.
Well, I was a lot more confident that we were going to have a good, positive, and productive session yesterday afternoon than I am right at this moment. British Columbia has difficulty with some correspondence that we've extended on a political basis to Victoria, and we're trying to resolve that now.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.